got one more question here. He says, I'm building my first home, and every single dollar is going towards the down payment. Well, Chris, that is a smart move, my friend. Super smart. Congratulations on your first home, my friend. And you're building it for your first home, which is awesome. He says, I'm going to have a very small yard, so a 21-inch mower is all we need. The builder is going to put in turf-type tall fescue sod. It's being built in Imperial, Missouri, which is about 30 minutes south of St. Louis. All right, cool. So it's a small lawn, and it's getting turf-type tall fescue sod put down by the builder. He says, I was curious, if you were going to lay sod, what steps would you take? I want to do everything I can to make sure my lawn dominates the neighborhood. Okay, so this is controversial, and that's good. I want to bring this up. I think I might offend people with this one. But this is my feeling, and this is from my years of observing sodded lawns in Northwest Indiana, which were sodded on the ugliest, plainest gray clay you could ever imagine. I know that people down in Georgia like to talk about their Georgia red clay or their orange clay, but let me tell you something. There is nothing more dead than colorless gray clay. It is the deadest of dead clays. And that is what we had up there. And I'm sure there's a technical name for it, slough clay, or I don't know, there's some name. But anyway, that's the clay we had. And let me tell you something, when it was wet, it was like you were playing with that old Play-Doh stuff. That's how, and it would stick to you, it would stick to your everything. It was nasty, it was like glue almost. And then when it was dry, it was hard as a rock, and it would crack like crumbling bricks. That's what we had, okay? And I worked for True Green during the years, and it's not just Northwest Indiana, it's all of Illinois, south of Chicago there. All of that area growing. I'm talking all the new growth that went through Tinley Park, Orland Park, Frankfort, Mokina. People that are from the south side know that the boom in those areas, how that was. Now, we had some boom in other areas too, like Country Club Hills and Hazel Crest and some areas like that, even South Holland, but those areas were more established, so those were more a lot of rebuilds and things like that, and there had been a lot of homes and neighborhoods existing around them. But when you went out to Frankfort, Mokina, even Orland, Tinley, those were all former farm fields that were growing in this gross, nasty, colorless gray clay. And I will tell you that I worked on those lawns for years, and there were many of them that were only just treated with Scott's four-step, but they were watered properly from the jump, and they were cut properly. And they were a lot of our customers as well. But the biggest thing was they were watered properly, and they were mowed properly. And those lawns were put on just that flat clay, and that was it. And in most cases, they weren't even given what I call a finish grade. It was just a final grade, which a final grade, I am not an excavator. I am not somebody that is an expert in this, so I'm just going to tell you what I know, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to tell you in general terms, a final grade is designed to just make sure that you have proper drainage to your swales and proper drainage around your home. That's what a final grade is for. It is not a perfect grade for sod. It's a final grade, not a finish grade. And typically, in order to get, at least from what I know, because I had a house built in Northwest Indiana too, in order to get a certificate of occupancy on the new home so you could move in, you just had to have an approved final grade. And then for us, you did have to have some sort of grass for erosion control. If you had put seed down, in my subdivision, if you had put seed down, they would have been okay with that. But most subdivisions required that not only did you have to have the final grade, but you also had to then have some sort of erosion control down. So what they would do is they would sod the front, and then they would seed the back, sometimes hydro seed, but most times they would do seed with straw. And that was good enough to get you a certificate of occupancy. So I will tell you, now, in between that final grade, remember, no finish grade. A finish grade is basically where I would say they bring in a box blade, which is on the end of a bobcat, and they give you a nice finish grade, which is going to be a finer grind or a finer grade till, and it's also going to give you a much flatter surface. There's a difference in flat and level, and it's not going to be perfectly flat, but the idea is they're going to smooth out that grade. They're going to take out any giant ruts. They're going to take out any giant rocks for the most case. And then in a lot of cases, they will hand finish with rakes and pull the rocks out. That's a finish grade. But I will tell you that in a lot of cases, the builders never did the finish grade. What the builder would do is they would do the final grade, especially if it was in times when it wasn't winter. They would do a final grade, and then someone would come in and sod right on top. That's it. Nothing in between. And I saw thousands of lawns like that, and those lawns were very healthy because they were watered properly, deep and infrequent, and they were also made sure that they were mowed properly. What I am telling you is that the key here was the mowing and the watering. It wasn't that they put 6 inches of topsoil in there. Now, I'm not saying it's bad to put topsoil in, but I want you to consider that when you bring topsoil in, what other problems are you bringing in? Do you know where that topsoil came from? If I saw builders that didn't go to the trouble to put a finish grade on before sodding, and listen guys, I'm not criticizing builders. I'm not doing that. But if I saw lawns that never had a finish grade, they just had a final grade and then sod plopped on top with no topsoil, and I will 100% tell you I have seen that in thousands of cases, and the back lawns were just seeded with sod, or just seeded and then straw thrown over top, and those things end up cracked as cracked can be the next year. There's no care in that. It's minimum viable to get your certificate of occupancy, okay? But those lawns came out fine. People that dealt with them, that worked with them, that fertilized them properly, but mostly that mowed them and watered them properly. I know I keep saying that, but repetition is the key to learning. Those lawns came out just fine. Now, the ones that were seeded in the back, yeah, those always had to have more remediation. But the sodded lawns in the front came out fine. So I will tell you that the most important thing to do is to make sure that a good finish grade is done and that all the large rocks are raked out and taken out. And then when you get your sod down, that you get it watered properly from the jump. And then after 30 days, that's when you can start fertilizing. And I recommend you use organic fertilizers because they're going to build soil carbon immediately. And of course, I got some other products I'd recommend you use. The RGS root growth stimulator, which is going to give you the sea kelp, which is going to help you get faster, deeper roots into that beautiful finished grade. The clay is fine. You guys know I'm not criticizing clay. Clay is actually my favorite lawn soil because it's worthless, because it has no nutrient value in it, because it doesn't offer a lot. Then I can be the one who builds it. I can be the one that creates it and makes it nice and optimize it and adds carbon and adds the nitrogen that I need and the elements that I need. I can be the one to do that instead of having to deal with something that came already pre-made for me, already high here and already low there. I'd rather have something that got nothing in it. That's how I'd rather start. And I'd rather do that with just a nice, perfectly made finished grade. Use that RGS if you want. It's going to help you stimulate roots. Humic acid, fulvic acid, those are going to drive more carbon into the soil. And then just take off and go from there. But I highly recommend that you make sure you get a good finish grade. I also believe that any topsoil that you bring in, I believe that clay sheds it really quick. I don't think it stays very long because I just don't think those two types of soil are going to mix. I just don't. I definitely know that happens here. Sand sheds everything here, and I'm going to assume that when you look at the same kind of thing, when you have this super hardcore, organic rich topsoil, and then you have this super crusty clay underneath, that topsoil isn't going to just automatically incorporate down in there. I believe that that's just going to sit on top there. Now, again, maybe you till it in, maybe you do this, maybe you do that. I just think that's a lot of extra that may not be needed. Now, don't take my word on it. If your builder says he wants to bring in 6 inches of topsoil and do other things, don't tell him no, because you have warranties and things like that you don't want to void. This is, for most part, this is just me spouting off, my particular opinions on things and based on my experiences. My experiences are not what everybody else's are. My experiences are mine, and I can just give you my advice. That is the recommendation that I would give you in that particular case, and always hope for the best. There you go. I hope that helped you. Our next one.